All right, so we're starting off our 52nd AutoHotkey webinar. Here's our contact info. This one we had 62 registrants, so it's great. We're picking up, getting more people, and you know there's a fair amount of people here, and people we know we're at odd times around the planet, right? People end up watching this from everywhere, so you can register, and then we'll email you the links that people shared, as well as links to the videos and whatnot. Yeah, you start off muted because it's just when you get more than two people talking, it's mayhem. So if you have a question, use the chat, or go ahead and you can unmute yourself and ask if there's a good pause, or just then just use the chat and say you have a question, and then whoever's talking, the other person's watching the chat, and we'll help you there. So that's that. So some announcements. These are the last three podcasts we've launched. So John actually, and I see John on here, and I should have at least explained this to John. I think he's probably watched the video already anyway. But we did a podcast for alternatives to GitHub. I say that because John Alon, he led a webinar, a really good webinar on GitHub and using it with AutoHotkey, which I thought it was really helpful. But Jackie and I were talking, and we're like, look, it is really, really helpful. At the same time, there are other things that we could just discuss. We didn't think it was really worth a webinar, but we did a podcast on just ways to back up your code, right, and to work smart. So we did a podcast on that. That was a good lecture. I think that didn't work. Put all these in the chat. I think the links come through, don't they? Oh, no, they don't. Okay, well, never mind. I'll put here's the link to the podcast. They're all, of course, on my YouTube channel, and somewhere my browser is opening.
Somewhere your browser is opening. We can't see that.
Well, you know what? I happen to have a very convenient tool called Quick Access Pop-Up with all of my links in it. So let me just do it from there. There we go. So that's a link where you can go find our podcast. And actually, I think the last one, or no, maybe I'm up to this one. I'm posting it up there. And then I did want to announce our intro, which is Isaiah on here? I didn't see him join yet. But he, because I suck at gooeys, right? And I've been saying this for years, and everyone laughs, but I do. And so I hired Isaiah. He's working with me now. He's Raptor X from the on the forum, and his YouTube channel's AHK Toots, and I had learned from him years ago on a lot of stuff. Anyway, he created this really great intro to gooeys course for AutoHotkey. Let me put the link here. If you guys, I think a lot of you have already bought the course, but I was very, very impressed with the quality and what we did. I, of course, helped him outline it and do the quizzes and stuff, but yeah, he did a great job explaining things, and I was stoked because I can start actually building gooeys now and understand them. So that's in there. Now, I did have one more announcement. Now it's not quite done, but I'm creating a website for connecting mentors and mentees. And here I have a couple examples of, like, you can sign up to be either a mentor or to you want to learn a topic. And so when now the link, let me show you the page here. It's not quite done, but when you hit join, you'll go through and answer a questionnaire. And these are the topics that you can have on what you want to learn, right? So we go through an array of questions of these you want to learn, and then we also ask which ones are you able to teach. So you'll go through this array twice, and then we ask some other questions like, hey, are you willing to pay your mentor? Do you need to get paid for being a mentor? So it's both things of, like, are you willing to actually give a little money, whatever. And I'm not trying to collect any money, by the way. This is all free. I just want to be able to help connect people, because when I've done stuff with, like, Jackie and John and Maestria and Isaiah, just so many people over the years, I have learned so much working directly with someone. It's so different. And so I wanted to facilitate this. So I'm creating the site. And when you go there, the information is going to go to me, because I didn't want to worry about people's data being everywhere. And then I will connect you with the other people. Right. So so this should be launching here, I think, within a week. So I'm excited to have that going. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, it's I think it is a very cool thing. I know I have learned, when I first, it's kind of Jackie Mine's story. When I was first learning AutoHotkey, I was looking at the forum, and I would read the forum and study it, and I'd hit walls and try to use the forum to solve it. And then after, a couple of years of that, Jackie answered a couple of my questions, and I realized it, and I finally reached out to him from his other site, and we started a conversation, and then we would jump on Zoom, and I just learned things so quickly. It's hard to describe. It was so much easier to have a person to go to, hey, have you done any work in this? And then they can, share some code or at least point you in the right direction. So even if the person doesn't solve the problem, but says, yeah, go look at this post here, or here's some example code to start you off, it really helps. So that's what this is.
And I do believe there are a lot of people that are using AutoHotkey for themselves, right? They're maybe in a company setting or home alone or whatever you call that, and they don't necessarily know anybody with coding experience or anybody who uses AutoHotkey other than virtual people on the forum or whatever, and this will at least give them a chance to have someone to have a rapport with of some kind.
Yeah. And also to your point, Jackie, even though you still don't technically know the person, but it's one thing to come onto a webinar and share your screen. One is you have all these people watching, but also you might have private information that you just can't do something like that. But if it's a one-to-one relationship, and let's say the person's in another state, but you've talked to them enough where you realize you built up some trust that, like, I'm not going to get fired if I happen to share my screen to look at something. And it really does. I try to explain to people, yeah, you can use the forum to answer a lot of questions, but when you can't share the screen or see what they're doing in the screen when they make a change, it changes everything when you can dynamically share your screen and they look at it and make a change, or the other way around. And it's night and day. So I'm off my box there. And the next one here was an example. Jean, and I'm saying this is by Jean, and let me put the link in here. Jean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you borrowed some of this from a couple different posts, and I believe they're cited in the script. We were working on, like, being able to uniquely identify a computer. And so in this code, there were 3 ways you can get the processor ID, you can get the motherboard, basically ID or serial number, and the MAC address. And so this code allows you to do it. And several of you guys on here, I wrote you separately with Jean and just said, hey, would you run this for us? Jean, actually, if you're up for it, if you want to either in the chat or unmute real quickly, what would you say like 90% came back with all 3? Does that sound about right?
Most of the time, the serial number is good, and it's the best. The reason for doing that is, in my case, and maybe some of you, just to validate that a license that you have for a software is used only on one computer or a given number of computers. I started using the processor ID, which is good, but I found that users can have the same processor ID for different computers if they have the same processor, and those running virtual machine will have the same processor ID for all their virtual machine. So I tried second, and so I found this post, Joe. It was on the AutoHotkey forum where you started a discussion on that a few years ago, and that's where I took the code that you have here.
Cool.
And so the second, the best way to get a unique identifier for a computer, a unique machine system identifier, is the motherboard. But for, I would say, maybe 5% of the systems, the value returned when you ask for the motherboard serial number is null or 0 or default value or to be entered by the sysadmin, or all kind of strange values that, and because I'm using it for quick access pop-up that is now licensed with control of the number of usage, number of installations, some users sent me what they received as a pseudo serial number. And for now, I have five or six values that are not really a serial number. So in this case, when I detect that the value is empty or one of the non-value, then I switch to the third approach, which is to read the address of the network card, the MAC address, which is good, but that can change more frequently. No, I would not say it's never frequent, but that has more chances to change over the time than the motherboard, because you can change your network
Ethernet
card or Ethernet card, yes, and so I would have myself one question about that for those who know this code more than I used it and it worked, but I had some question. But maybe before you want to continue, just the introduction to the whole script.
I'd say, Jean, we're on the topic. Why don't you go ahead and
okay. So the MAC address. When I run this, you see that the last line, or one of the last line, is obj_item.ip address 0 equal the address found. So I don't understand. If someone could walk me through these lines, it will help me understand what's going on, where this information come from, because to me it works, but there are a few things. First, I don't understand from where come the variable obj_item, because it's not assigned as we can see there. It's part of, in my understanding of loops and while command and things, I don't see where the obj_item is assigned, so I don't know where it comes from.
Right.
And it's an array with, or it's an array, or is it IP address is an array? So if there are more than one card, it's IP address 0, 1, 2, 3 that will return the addresses of the different adapters. So these were the question I had. Just to, I prefer understanding what I use. Sometimes it's too hard, so I just rely. I'm confident, so I will trust those who made that. But yeah, so that these are the questions I had about that.
Jackie, do you have any idea on that? I see what you mean, John.
I looked into the exact same things years ago, and I don't have the correct terms to explain it precisely. But sure enough, because AutoHotkey allows you to create a variable without anything in it, as soon as you put it together with the column items object here, it can get value as soon as it becomes the first entry in that object or array. So while you do the while call items, the object item gets filled out with the first entry.
Okay, and it's filled at each iteration of the while loop?
Yeah, it comes from the line above it, where you have at the end dot underscore new enum.
Yeah.
So your enumerate, that it's an English word that I can't pronounce.
Enumeration.
Yeah, enumeration over the query that you make.
Okay.
Joe, he was so nice.
So it's a kind of system variable. Obj_item is a kind of system variable returned by the new enum.
Yeah. So the new enum returns an array from the query to select from Win32 network adapter configurations where IP enabled equals true. So that returns an array of those. That's what the underscore new enum does, returns an array.
Yeah.
And puts that array in call items. And the while loop then immolates, whatever. It loops over the items in the array. And because AutoHotkey allows you to both use the dot notation, the one that we see on the line just below, or the brackets notation that we see on the while line. Yeah. It's just a matter of how AutoHotkey is a little bit quirky.
So what it does, it loops in this, and when it finds the current IP address or IP address 1, is there IP address 012 or only 1? I never used it.
No, as you said yourself, it's looping over all of the network adapters that has an IP address.
Yeah.
So the first one it gets to, it says object item IP address at the position 0, which is the first one. And then you compare it to the AutoHotkey built-in variable A IP address 1.
Which is an array.
That's
pseudo array because
yeah, exactly. It's the pseudo array.
Yeah.
So the 1 at the end there means that you're using.
So if you have 2 cards, you would have IP address 2.
Most likely, yeah.
And because I tried it and it returns 0.0.0 because I don't have a second network card.
Exactly. And if those two match, simply return the MAC address.
The MAC address for this card.
Yeah.
For this IP address. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear.
Yeah. Okay. That's at least the best way that I can explain it.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember when I was looking at the other ones, because in that initial post, Jean, that you mentioned where I had asked a question.
Yeah, I'll put the URL in the chat if someone wants to refer to it.
Yeah, I remember looking at a bunch of other things you could get, like the video card info and so many other things about the computer, right? It was crazy.
Yeah.
And the question was, should you use a bunch of them? Should you use one? And if I remember at the time, we all agreed probably using the motherboard was your best one, because it's very, very rare that you change a motherboard, and yet you might, put in a DVD drive or take it out, or put in, a different video card, or put in, other information.
Yeah. The only bad thing is that it returns a dummy value. I would not say often, but more than rarely. It's so that's. And these dummy values, I understand they can be anything. So if it was always empty, you could rely that if it is empty, then take something else. But if it's default or to be filled, it's hard to catch these, but I'll live with that for now. And I have users reporting these entries, so I can add them as exceptions for which I will use the MAC address instead of the motherboard.
And John, I didn't explain it, but the whole purpose of this was he wants to be able to give a license of his software out to people to run on a given device. And how do we make sure that they're not using that license on more than one device? And that's what the goal of, the other thing was, to see which one of these things is most consistent and reliable and returns good data, or using a combination of them.
And the license can be for 2 or 5 or 10 installations, and there's a counter, but the counter has to rely on trustable information.
Right.
Yeah. But I'm good now. I'm
yeah. There are a few of the things with this code I don't remember exactly, because it is quite a few years ago when I read about it. I don't believe that you actually need the impersonation level part in the code. If you look on the other 3 you had on the deck, Joe, if you look at the get processor ID just above it, the first one there, you simply don't have the it's doing almost the same thing.
Yeah, I've seen other example where instead of having dot for computer string, you have the AHK variable. I think it's a PC name or something like that. That can also be used instead of dot, and it was working. But
yeah, it's used in
dot is
one just below.
Oh, you see computer name in the second example.
Yeah, exactly. So they are using the same exact method of getting information. One of them is just getting the processor ID, and the other one is getting the serial number of the motherboard.
Yeah.
The information, or the way they're doing it, is in Yeah, it's using the exact same method of doing it. It's just structured with different code. All three of them, for that matter. So
Yeah. And for the motherboard, if you put dot instead of the, I'll just try it, instead of the name of the computer name.
yeah, you're trying it on your screen, so we are not.
Yeah, I can tell you, it still works if you put dot instead of the computer name.
Yeah, yeah.
I could share my screen if you wish, but I can tell you.
Yeah, I was hesitant. I didn't, especially the MAC address. I'm like, I don't think we need to be making it that public, right? Having a recorded webinar with the MAC address, just in case.
No, there's no reason to show anybody's MAC address. That's true enough, Joe.
Yep.
But it was just a matter of all three of these functions that we're seeing here are doing and using the same exact functionality.
Mm-hmm.
They're just all of them structured a little bit different, but all of them are actually doing the exact same thing with a different amount of lines and a different structure to them.
And a different source, which is Win32 processor or baseboard or a network adapter. These are different sources to get information from.
True, but all of them are using the same COM object to get the information. It's just asking it for different types of.
Yeah, it's like querying a different table in the same database.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Well, that was.
Thank you.
Yeah, interesting. All right, let me stop sharing, and then Maciej, do you? Let me. Where? There we go. Stop sharing. I know, like I said, I know you had some stuff you wanted to share on a tool on HotStrings. I think you said your team has created.
Yes, indeed. Hi to everyone. My name is Maciej Słojewski, and Joe and Jackie, thank you for your hospitality, and it is an honor to me to present some of results. What I actually did, let me now share the screen. That one, yeah. Do you, okay, share, yeah. Are you able now to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, what I show right now is just AutoHotkey forum. And here you can see the thread dedicated to scripts and functions, which was started by Jack Dunning or Dunning. I don't know how to correctly pronounce
Dunning.
his name. Dunning, but he's quite a known person in the world of AutoHotkey, thanks to his blog and also free available manuals dedicated to AutoHotkey. And as you can see, about a year ago, he started a thread dedicated to a tool which with graphical user interface helps to define and also use HotStrings. I found personally it very helpful and nice idea to have a graphical user interface to those of us who are not very familiar with scripting. And this tool enables just by clicking and entering some text, defining HotStrings. Soon I have found that I would like to have more. And also reading some of the news or blogs prepared by Jack, I found that it is possible to enhance a bit this tool. So I started coding together with my team, because at the moment I have, in fact, 3 people who are able to prepare AutoHotkey scripting. And as a result, I prepared a tool which looks like this. This is the main screen. And today I have put announcement about releasing of this tool to AutoHotkey forum. But I decided to publish it not in a separate thread, but just to continue work of Jack. I think that it is fair because it is quite similar. Even looking into the GUI itself, you can see some similarities. And in fact, this is just a work in progress. So I continue the work of Jack, enhancing his tool with additional functions. What these additional functions are? Well, what I missed a lot was the possibility to divide HotStrings into different categories. I called them libraries. So now I can store HotStrings which are similar in some way, which have something in common in separate files. Thanks to this idea, I can better manage of the HotStrings and keep them in order, which I like. In future, this idea also raises a question if such a graphical user interface cannot be combined together with a small database, because it is just a small step from separate files, where data is stored in particular order to the database. Maybe one day. Currently, it is enough just to have several files with HotStrings. What I tried to mimic is functionality of original AutoHotkey function called HotStrings. So there are also used the same graphical markings as you can see here. What else? What is another enhancement is enabling of the clipboard to very quickly, much quicker than with use of AutoHotkey, enter long strings, long text strings. Maybe let's have a look into the application itself, because this is what I show you right now is just the description which you can find on the forum. By the way, let me put in the chat right now, or maybe later, because I don't know how to do it. I will add to the chat link to this thread in the forum. And right now, let me switch to the application itself. Yeah, so this is the main window. Now I have enabled the first from the top library. Now it reads in, and now I can, with touching the keys up and down, I can move over the definitions of the HotStrings. And in case I would like to change something, I can do it right away. For example, just by clicking here. And then I can push the button set HotString and it is active. So all the HotStrings are dynamic. They are not static by dynamic. They are created with HotString function.
Mm-hmm.
So the same word is used for several different meanings, and sometimes it can be confusing. Therefore, I decided to differentiate a little bit trigger string, which is the string used to trigger the hot string from the hot string itself. So the idea is to have, as I said, several different files. There are plenty of them at the moment. Yeah. And all the hot strings are active on the same time. So if I open an editor, so let it be a notepad.
They're all always active, or within a given.
Yeah, they're all always active. So I store maybe it can be also interesting and worth to see how the definitions looks like. So let me move to the right folder. HotStrings, HotStrings 3, and here is the subfolder libraries. And for example, the first from the top, abbreviations. It looks like this. So this is comma separated values file, CSV abbreviation. And you can see the definition of all hot strings is quite similar to definition which is found in original of the hotkey. To determine different zones of the definition, I do not use colons, but a special mark, that one. This is outside of the keyboard. This is a mark, a key which is outside of keyboard. Thanks to that, it cannot be accidentally put in action. So the idea is to have a trigger string, a set of options. Next, the trigger string. Next, the output function. I will say a bit more in a minute about that. Next, information if particular hot string is currently active or not. And additionally, there is a space for comment. So it mimics very much what we can see here in the right part of the screen. Next, yes?
I was going to say it is Unicode compliant, right? Because like obviously.
Yes, exactly. Soon, me and my team, we have found that it could be helpful also to have search capability because as many people work on the same set of hot strings, it could be the case that some of them are duplicated, and duplicated hot strings are not welcomed. So we have prepared search function, and this is the second screen which this graphical user interface have. And here we can search, for example, AHK, and we see now all of them, that there are 3 instances. And after pressing each of them, we can immediately edit it because it goes into the left screen, which is prepared for edition. I can also move with pressing the move button, move particular definition to another file, to different file. This is how it works at the moment. What is maybe interesting and unique, and thanks to you, Joe, and also to Jack, I have found that clipboard, applying of the clipboard can be very helpful. Absolutely. For some specific situations when the hot string is long. Yeah. I can show you some examples of the long hot strings. I keep them in separate file called technical hot strings. Well, in my work, I frequently use some names of technical standards, and they are quite long sometimes. So let me show how it works. Again, I need a piece of editor. Yeah. And for example, let's use something iris norm, and then it immediately jumps in. And what you can see also when I write something, small submenu opens, and this small submenu is a hint of trigger strings which are available. So when I continue, amount of the strings in this small menu is reduced. And when I go to the end, the hot string is triggered. So for each hot string, there are several output functions which are possible to use. By default, this is send input, and this is a native AutoHotkey function. The next one is a clipboard, so we could see already how it works. The next one is combination of send input and menu. Let's see how it works. I will go into the, I will choose another library.
So even though you're swapping between libraries, all of the hot strings are always active. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the libraries are just to help you stay organized, not
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And this is the power of this solution and the main enhancement in comparison to the original concept of Jack Dunning, where all the hot strings were present just in one file. And I found it inconvenient in some situations. As I said, especially when you have a group of people who are working in the same company, but they would like to have some of the hot strings dedicated just to them. So let me present the next function, which is menu, and it is especially helpful in case of first and second names. For example, let's choose personal hot strings, and here is my first and second name. By the way, maybe let's show how it works in case of an email. When I use the following trigger string, I have two options to choose, and now I can switch between them just by pressing arrow keys up and down. So I can enter my private email, or I can enter my official email, let's say office email. And these options are available here. For some languages, like Polish language, there is a different form of nouns, I think, depending on position in the sentence. So let's show it. Let's show it here. So, for example, up to 7 forms are used in my language. And now, if I want to correctly put the name, first and second name of somebody, I can quickly do that with aid of this additional menu. So this is another functionality. And maybe one more example. I will show you the name of my, maybe not that one. Let's try something else. Yeah, popular abbreviations. BOM can mean bill of materials, but it can mean also byte order mark.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks to this menu, I can trigger different hot strings with the same trigger string. And
cool. That is cool.
This is another enhancement. For some next functionality are comments, and this is one functionality which was added today. For some hot strings like time or date, the meaning of such a hot string could be confusing to some people. So it is possible to add a short comment. What does it mean? And why, for example, it was defined this way, and so on. Soon, I hope till the end of the current week, we will add also a sandbox, so additional text editing window where somebody could immediately check if trigger string and hot string works as expected, and if not, alter it without necessity of opening additional editor window. So it could be also helpful in some situations. Yeah, what is also here, after learning from you, Joe, we decided to add also clipboard delay.
Yeah.
Option,
yeah.
Because I learned by heart that depending on the PC, it could be helpful to change it. So it is possible to make it with use of keyboard, and it is immediately active. What else? Some configuration.
Sorry, the keyboard delay part. How does that look in code? What's the exact need for the keyboard delay?
For clipboard delay, as Joe explained in one of his short videos, operating system, well, Windows operating system needs some time to pass the information from the clipboard to application. And sometimes when you have many applications opened, it takes a little bit longer.
So Jackie, you know how when you put something on the clipboard and then you send paste and then you restore the clipboard right after, but if you restore it too soon, it actually ends up sending the thing you put in after?
Yeah,
right?
I knew exactly that. And
okay.
that was what I was trying to make sure it was for.
Yeah.
So that it wasn't for the clip weight part of it or some other part of it, just that it is for the after effect. That was just to make sure that it was put in for the right reason.
Yeah. What else? Some configuration options. Maybe this one can be helpful. Undo last hot string. So, for example, when I call a hot string and I press Ctrl Z, I get the original hot string. It doesn't work here as expected. Maybe let's try something else. AutoHotkey, and now I press Ctrl Z and I get the last one hot string. No, it doesn't work as it should at the moment. The idea is that, or maybe it doesn't work just in Notepad, because Notepad has its own specific handling. Let's open Word.
Do you know a place where Control-C doesn't work as an undo?
No. So I also have, for the same purpose, Control backspace. Let's try in Word. AutoHotkey, and now Control Z. No, it acts not as expected. Yeah, it should remove that part and leave just the trigger string. I suppose that it has something to do with the newest AutoHotkey, which I have on my PC at home, from where I now show it to you, because at my office it works as expected. There was
Well, it's because you're on a webinar. We've learned that over
maybe,
time. Yeah.
Maybe. Anyway, the idea behind is to remove, after pressing Control Z or Control backspace, remove the last hot string and leave just the trigger string. It is helpful in numerous situations where, for example, you trigger the hot string which is not expected. For example, com. Yeah, and now it works. I don't know why. Let's try.
How complex is the undo function? Because sure enough, if you're sending it, you would know how many keys you sent and stuff like that. But if you're pasting it, if you're pasting multiple, I don't know, you could decide to paste in imagery or stuff like that.
It is quite complex, but not more than, I think, 20 lines of code. Anyway, I will look into it after a webinar.
And then, Maciej, you mentioned this is used by people at your company, right? How are you keeping it where people can add stuff? How are you allowing it on multiple computers and they can add items? Is that right? How is it getting synced up?
Yeah, we use SVN repository for that purpose. Maybe you are familiar with it. This is a predecessor of Git, so it's a pretty simple system. And we have just some privileged users which are able to change, let's say, the core files, and all other users are allowed to keep their hot strings in a specific file. So to show you how it works, for example, abbreviations are one of those special files which are centrally maintained.
Yeah.
And from the other hand, I have a file called new, where I keep my personal hot strings. And after some time, when I come to a conclusion that it could be beneficial to others to share it, then I, for example, go into search window. Here I find one of these which I would like to move, for example, Senelec, right? And now I can move it to another library.
Cool.
And later I can, of course, commit it to central repository. So it is now based mainly on good communication within the team. So all of us have the the file called personal HotStrings, which is the second one, where we keep very specific information, like, for example, how do we start our emails, how we close our emails, telephone numbers, and so on. So these are not shared among users because they are personal, in fact. So this is how it goes.
That's very
maybe good that you have mentioned about it, because one of the biggest benefits of this application, and in fact, this is the core reason why we started to develop it, is a common dictionary which can be used throughout the whole company. For example, we have some products, and some of them can be named in a different way. Somebody can say that this is over current protection. Somebody else can call a specific module just as protection. Somebody else module of protection, and so on and so on. As my team is responsible for preparing of user-oriented documentation, the same concept of naming of products is very important. And thanks to AutoHotkey and HotStrings application, we can reach this goal very easily. For example, if somebody uses abbreviation of specific module, then gets the unified definition, unified name of such a module, and so on and so on. So I don't know if you are familiar with some technical standards dedicated to safety. Even in technical standards, there is a requirement to keep such a dictionary, but on the same time, the same technical standard didn't define how to reach this goal. So I know that some companies keep special Excel sheet where definitions are stored, but then it is entirely based on human behavior and human memory. The solution where you apply HotStrings application is much better, because all you have to remember are just some names of modules, which are most of the time anyway well known throughout the company, and then just by putting these abbreviations you can get the same definitions. So this makes life much easier. And finally, this is a correct addressing of this requirement, formal requirement, which is even checked by so-called assessors on time of certification. And I even asked some time ago to assessor if they are how do they deal with this requirement in their company, and the answer was, well, we keep it in the Excel sheet and do as everybody else. And then I answered, there is a solution. Thanks to AutoHotkey, you can have a better way of dealing with this.
Yeah, I spent all my I'm trying to think of the right term for it, but I worked in corporate America all my years of working on computers, and every company I worked at, there was a Fortune 500 company, right? All of them, and they all had different ways, but we all had our brand police or had our things that we had to have set in a certain way, and everyone handled it very poorly. So it's great seeing a tool built with AutoHotkey that can really help people work, be more compliant and work smarter and be happier and just make it easier, right? So it's a win for everybody. Very cool.
Yeah. Cool. So that's it for now. The application is still on heavy development. We add new functions almost every day. But as I know that webinar is just once in a month, I decided to show it today and also announce readiness of this application on AutoHotkey forum today.
Cool.
Maybe somebody else will find it helpful. I have also the plan to commercialize it in some way, because the application itself will be free and is free, but definitions, I mean libraries of
interesting.
HotStrings, are quite unique and could be even solved. So I don't know yet in which direction we will go with it, but at least it is an option to think about.
It's awesome. I love it.
I'm curious, you mentioned you have a team working with you on it. How many hours do you think you have in this total, man hours wise?
It's very hard to estimate, to be honest, because some of development I do over hours because I like it, and it makes fun to me. But let's try. The main developer is my colleague, and since 1 month he do it as his main task, 8 hours per day. So it makes in total 160 hours. I think that we can multiply it by 3, and then we will get number which is maybe close to the right answer.
Ballpark, thanks.
So something like 500 hours, I think. The script itself is at the moment 2,150 lines long. I don't know if it's much. It depends on the task. Here, the GUI itself consumes a lot of lines of code.
Hey, Dale asked in the chat. So when you're, when you're typing and it's auto assisting with your words, I believe you use the up or down arrow to jump to the thing and then select it. But could you basically have an accelerator key that you would allow you to jump to the thing without using the up down arrows?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Well, go ahead and start typing something that brings up the multi-select.
Okay. Yeah. Let's try.
Well, something that has multiple, there you go. Now, yeah, and I think what he was hoping for was to be able to hit like an accelerator key that would automatically jump you without using your up and down arrows. Is that right, Dale? Am I getting your question correct?
When I have a menu, so several HotStrings combined, several HotStrings triggered by the same trigger string, the first one from top requires me just to press Enter key.
Okay. So
how does the built-in control here, does it allow you to just click on 2, just as an example, or anything like that?
So what you would like me to? No, I don't understand. Sorry.
It's just when you had that selection menu open with your 2 options, if you're clicking the up and down arrow now, right?
Yes.
Moving the selection. Could you instead click, let's say, the number 1?
No. At the moment it's not possible. But
but the thing he's asking is if he often uses, let's say, his email address, and he has 5, and he often uses the 4th one. He would like to have some kind of shortcut key.
Understood.
Yeah, instead of pressing down 4 times.
Yeah. At the moment, what is possible is one can change the order, and for example, the most frequently used put at the top. Yeah, but I didn't think about it, but yeah, it is quite a nice concept and easy to implement. To use the numbers, for example, to trigger specific options. Yeah, thanks for this tip.
In you showed at least one file that was showing a CSV, which to me it was actually a pipe delimited, but it doesn't really matter. Are all the definitions just saved in the plain text file, or you're not using any sort of a database anywhere?
Yeah, all of them are saved in the same format. Again, let me show how it looks like, and there is no exception. So maybe in future we will also use a small database for that purpose. So
it just opens up some other possibilities, right? And speed is amazing in a database. But you know, with something you mentioned too, you could sort them by the most frequently used. Well, if you actually captured a count of every time it was used, you could have a checkbox to say, do you want to sort your options by the frequency you use them, and have it keep track of it for you, right? Which would be really, to me, pretty cool. If you're using stuff a lot, have them automatically sort it for you, because most people they just don't know. They might know the top one or two, and then after that, it's it's mayhem. But anyway, it's overall, I love it. Like I said in the chat, to me, HotStrings, they're the lowest hanging fruit for people to use AutoHotkey and just really, be efficient.
Yeah, and the other reason why we decided to develop it, the concept of HotStrings is very easy to grab for people.
Yeah, agreed.
But building the practice of using the HotStrings is completely different task. And most of the people do not like the idea of editing text files and keeping the syntax. Even that syntax of HotStrings is, in my opinion, easy.
Yeah, it's simple. Yeah.
And from the other hand, people very much like to click into Windows, and I think that this is the reason why minority of people like Linux and majority like Windows, because this another concept of windowing everything and making a clickable everything is somehow more user-friendly, or average user-friendly.
One other thing I was going to ask you is, when you're typing, is it a fuzzy match, or does it have to match the first couple letters exactly?
Again, I'm not sure if I understand you correctly.
So enter a new, like if you typed VID, would COVID still come up?
No, I have to finish. So I have to go
right,
to the end.
But just start from scratch, start a new line, and start typing VID. It's only listing things that are, something you might consider is the ability to do a fuzzy match, which isn't even, what the example I gave is not even a fuzzy match, right? Because it's matching the inner part of it, not the beginning part. But like to me, a true fuzzy match is I might even miss a couple letters, but it looked at the whole thing, and there's the Levenstein distance. There's a couple things that you can measure that way people don't have to know the exact first couple letters. If they got those wrong, they could still come up with the right options, right? Jackie, do you remember what that was? We did a webinar where we showed there's a script in the forum that has like 7 or 8 different ways that you can do fuzzy matching. And I'll find the script and send it to you. But it's it's something to consider, right? Because I've tried implementing something not as like that you have here, but something close to it. And people's biggest complaint was, well, I don't know the first couple letters, of what I'm trying to match. And but I know the word later.
I also have a fuzzy match library. It's called string similarity.
Cool.
Mhm. And what is also an option to configure is end charts, end charts, and I found it also helpful in some situations. Well, what we are planning to do is also a code generator. So having a specific file with trigger and hotstring pairs, we would like to have in future possibility to export it to native format of AutoHotkey. It could be of some help to people who are willing to learn how to use syntax of AutoHotkey. And the last function which we would like to implement in future is also importing of libraries. So, for example, I know that there are plenty of autocorrection libraries for English language, and they are static and prepared for, of course, for English. And it would be nice also to have a function to import it to this application. So there are numerous ideas how to what to add and what to change. Well, we are proceeding with the list of functions to be added. At the moment, as I said, we develop it heavily, so day by day, new release, let's say, of HotStrings is available at GitHub.
No, thank you for coming on and sharing everything. It's really, really cool.
Yeah. So that's it about HotStrings.
Cool. Did anybody have any other quick questions on this?
No, so it looked great.
Cool. Okay, and then I'm trying to find my chat. Hopefully, there's nobody responding to that. Ian, Dimitri, did you have something you I think said you wanted to either share or had a question? And maybe I'm misremembering. I get busy and get confused on who in the world I'm chatting with. I, for the life of me, can't find my. Oh, here we go. Oh, and actually, let me. Oh, not at the moment. Okay, sorry. Yeah, and lots of comments in there. Maciej, if you can see that, lots of people appreciate the work you did. Very cool. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll start it back up.